are trying to follow Paul's thoughts in Romans 9 to 11, and we saw in Romans 9 at the beginning that he emphasized his love for Israel. The second thing is he emphasized the riches of Israel, and in the vast part of the chapter 9, he actually emphasized the sovereignty of the one true Creator God. And we very much have to understand that God is free. Now we're coming into chapter 10, and as I want to read that with you, we first see an obstacle on the way to salvation. Paul says, "Brothers, it is my heart's desire and prayer to the one true God for them, for those who are Israel, for the Jewish people, that they may be saved." It is all of Paul's desire. He is burning for the salvation of Israel. But now, as a first step, he shows that there is an obstacle on the side of Israel, and we have to listen exactly so to not misunderstand what Paul is saying. He says, "I bear them witness that they have God's seal." Very often, if I listen to Christian preaching, I listen to people and I have the feeling that this zeal is, it can be also translated with jealousy in English, that it is seen as something negative. If Paul here says that they have God's zeal, he says, "I bear them witness," he emphasizes first of all something positive. And if we go through the Bible and see that there is being written or it's been talked about the zeal that the Lord has for Zion, for example, or that we see that his jealousy, his zeal is like a burning fire, like a consuming fire, or that the prophet Isaiah says that the Lord has wrapped himself in zeal, like a cloak, like a mantle, like something that warms him up, like something that is around him. Or the prophet Zechariah says, "I am jealous for Zion with great jealousy, with great zeal, and with great wrath." It is part of God's very own character, of one of his attributes, that he is zealous, that he is a jealous God. So if we as human beings if we have God's zeal, that is part of our being created in God's image, and it's seen very positive in the Bible. Even very often it appears in challenging situation. For example, here I have the whole situation of Phinehas, the priest, who turned towards Israel, and he actually killed people there. And God says that Phinehas has turned back my wrath from the people of Israel, and that he was jealous with my jealousy among them. And then God says, "Behold, I give you my covenant of peace." He says to Phinehas, "This will be valid for him and his descendants after him, a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he was zealous for his God and achieved atonement for the sons of Israel." Or we see the prophet Elijah, who has been zealous with all my power for the Lord, the God of hosts. Look at these passages in their context, as the prophet Elijah killed the Baal's priests in his zeal. It wasn't a nice thing. But this is what is being taken up when Paul, the Apostle Paul, says that I am a zealous man. I've been zealous for God from my youth. And or if we see that people are brought up to him in Jerusalem, and the apostles there say, you see, brother, how many thousands among the Jews have come to faith, and they are zealous for the Torah. It's something positive. They are not objective. They are not neutral, but they burn. And I have here a few passages where the Apostle Paul says you should be earnestly desiring. That's how it is translated, but it's the same word. Actually, in Greek, it uses the word that's taken from the Hebrew, zealous. You should be zealous for spiritual gifts. You should be a chosen nation who is zealous for good works. The problem for the Jewish people is that they're zealous, they're jealous, but without knowledge. And what they're doing then is something, and that's the obstacle, that's the stumbling block on their way to salvation, is that they raise up their own righteousness, and by raising up with a good zeal their own righteousness, they misunderstand, they reject the righteousness of God. They do not submit to God's righteousness. We have to take this, what Paul says here, but they are, I testify that they are zealous, that they have God's zeal, but without knowledge. And then he goes on, they misunderstood the righteousness of the one true living God and aspired to their own righteousness, and thus did not submit to God's righteousness. We have to see that with the best of intentions, you may lift up, you may raise up your own righteousness, and in such a way not submit to God's righteousness. Actually, this is a danger I see with us as believers up to this very day. And we might, with the best of intentions, with the clearest and finest of theology, raise up our own righteousness instead of looking to the one true and only God, submitting to His sovereignty, listening to His voice, and being tools in His hands. And by this even forgoing our own salvation.